And the only prescription is more cowbell.
Representative Heffley, welcome to another edition of your podcast. And today we are talking about the subject that has been the topic of many debates about Pennsylvania law enforcement in the last 2 weeks. Danilo Cavalcante and his escape from prison. What's going on with this guy? Tell us a little bit of his background. What have you heard?
Well, I mean, obviously the guy's a murderer. He was a murderer in Brazil. He came illegally to this country and then committed a very heinous crime. I think he stabbed his girlfriend 38 times. And he's just, just probably one of the worst specimens of humanity that are out there. And, capture him. They put him in prison. There's one more reason why I support capital punishment. I mean, obviously, if he would have been, on death row awaiting, or if the governor would sign death warrants for individuals like him who should receive the death warrant, we wouldn't have to do this. But I really want to commend the law enforcement for coming together and capturing him. He was on the run for about 2 weeks. He actually, like Spider-Man, scaled the wall to get out of prison. It's just amazing how he escaped.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute, because one of the things that really gets brought up here is the problem that we have in Pennsylvania prisons. We've got problems with escapees. Some of it is maybe a little bit of lax enforcement, but this one, the man Spider-Man'd up and out of a wall. It was an impressive feat of physical capability, but also it seems like people weren't paying too close of attention.
Yeah, I would say if I was in prison, I would not be Spider-Manning up any walls, let me tell you. But no, I think we need to look at how do we enhance security at these prisons for individuals like this, so that to make sure they don't get out. And there's a lot of other individuals like him in these prison settings. So there has been a package of legislation that's been introduced, mainly looking at county prisons. How are inmates escaping? How is this happening? What can we do? How can we make sure we have enough officers? And that's a big issue with law enforcement, but also in our correctional facilities is the labor shortage, and making sure that we have people in there that we have enough for staffing, and make sure we're not running them too many hours of overtime. So I think there's a whole package of bills to really address prison security at the county level.
And one of those bills deals with an incentive to try to keep people from escaping. Obviously, you just said you're a proponent of capital punishment, but what do we have to say about these folks? They're convicted murderer that escapes. What should be the proper punishment if you try to escape prison?
Well, I mean, what do you do? We're gonna put you back in prison? Yeah, I mean, I think that when we look at people that have committed heinous crimes like this, I've always, obviously, I'm pro-life all the way, but when you look at people like this, individuals that have done such heinous crimes in society, I think we really need to look at reinstating capital punishment for individuals like this. God forbid he would have gotten out if he gets out again. And does he hurt somebody? Does he kill somebody? There was a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week watch on the family of the woman that he killed, because he was fearful that he was going to go back and retaliate. They should not. They're victims. They should not have to live in fear, especially when somebody's been put away. So I think we really need to revisit, how we handle prisoners at this level.
And it's not just previous victims, it's anyone in the community. I live in the county right next to this.
Yeah.
A lot of us lived in fear, locked our doors, and saying, what's going on? This guy could show up in our garage, steal our stuff, or shoot us.
And that's what happened. He actually broke into somebody's garage, stole a firearm. With the owner of the home actually shot at him, but I believe that from what news reports, he was not hit. But it's one more reason why I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment and the being able to protect yourself in your home. If he had just gotten on a bus or anything and gotten a little bit farther north, into areas where there aren't police departments, it could have been a whole different story. So I really want to commend law enforcement on the work that they did. I think we need to continue along this approach for public safety. Obviously, we had an individual who escaped from prison. We had hundreds of officers, and they did their job and getting him and returning him to prison. But I also think we need to take the next step. And I would say that we have issues throughout this Commonwealth, especially right now in the city of the first class in Philadelphia and the Kensington area. And the video coming out of that is just horrific.
It looks like a zombie zone.
It really is. So I would call on the governor. He was there at a makeshift command post for taking some photos. Hey, let's leave that command post up. Let's leave these officers intact, and let's go down and let's clean up Kensington. Let's take 300 officers, go through there, do a sweep. Anybody that's dealing drugs, anybody that's caught with possession of drugs, let's get them into the criminal justice system, get them into a drug court program so they can get into some type of treatment, and then pick up the folks that are dealing these drugs, especially fentanyl, on our streets, and lock them up. And get a prosecutor in a city of the first class to actually do it. So I think we need to continue this, and I think it's great that we captured this individual, making our streets safer. But we have people that are dying every day in this Commonwealth of overdoses, and it's time that we put the same effort into that they have put into capturing this escaped criminal.
And you make a great point here, because when you look at what's going on in Philadelphia, we have some crime problems here. It is obvious. It is true. It is plainly, it's right there for people to see. But Philadelphia is not yet degraded into the hole that has developed in places like San Francisco and L.A., where things are just out of control, and we don't want to let it get there.
Yeah, and I think Kensington is probably one of the worst parts of the country right now. What really is going on? An open-air drug market, and it's spilling out from Kensington. People are going into the city, picking up drugs, buying drugs there because they can. Because there's nobody being prosecuted, and they're bringing those drugs back into communities like in Carbon County, all throughout northeastern PA and into central PA, where you have fentanyl and Trank now, which is a horse tranquilizer, xylazine, which is actually turning people into zombies, and they're using that with the fentanyl so they can maintain that high for longer. But this is coming out. It's coming out of Philly. That's where it's coming from, and we really need to address that. We should address it now. We had a governor who was the attorney general, and now he's a governor. He should understand law enforcement. He should understand the crisis that's happening throughout our Commonwealth because of what we're allowing to happen in this one part of the state.
Let's address that exact problem. The governor was in charge of trying to get some grip on what was going on here in the state. Should have a pretty good idea of it, yet doesn't seem to have a firm grip on the biggest cities in our state. What is the disconnect? Obviously, there is a mentality issue here that's a little bit different. What do you think has to change first?
Well, I think the people that live in the community around Kensington really need to stand up and say enough is enough. We're going to make it stop. But I think I talked to a lot of folks who lost loved ones or family members for overdoses, and they're fed up with it. And we pass a lot of bills to deal with the opioid crisis. There's movies out there now about how the overprescribing of prescription drugs led to the opioid crisis. We've kind of addressed a lot of those issues. There's still some work to be done there. But what we're seeing now is fentanyl, which is a synthetic, a much more potent, much more deadly form of a synthetic opioid that is killing people. We lost over 100,000 people, 110,000 people last year in the United States of America to overdoses. 85% of those were fentanyl involved. So, we can do better than that as a nation, and that's more than we lost in the Vietnam War. That's more than double of the amount of deaths from the Vietnam War. We can do better than that, and we really need an all-out effort. And we need communities like a prosecutor in Philadelphia who's actually going to prosecute people and shut down these open-air drug markets. And we need a governor who's actually going to stay here instead of traveling or running for a higher office and actually do the job of governor and address this issue.